Brent from Frame It All here. Today I'm going to show you how to pick out the best rocks for your waterfall. So what we're going for here is a flat rock and a rock with an edge that is either at a perfect 90-degree angle with the front or even a negative edge where the front edge of your rock where the water is going to be coming off of is actually going inward. It'll shoot over better and it won't drip down the edge. So it'll actually give more of that cascading waterfall feel to it. And the best thing that you can do to find a truly flat rock is to use a small level. And you just put the rock down and you use that level to try to see how good the flatness of your rock is. And we'll also use this when we're placing it on the waterfall itself. And what we want is to be able to control our water flow as much as possible. So what I'm doing now is laying out a flat foundation of stones, and this can be made up of any material that won't carry over into your water stream. So things to avoid would be sand or dirt, and then things that would be good to use would be flat rocks, small rocks that will sort of fill in all the nooks and crannies. And this is going to be where we build our waterfall on top of. So the flatter it is, the easier it will be to level off the different flow areas of our waterfall, the different levels of it. So we'll put this here. I'm starting with the first level and building my way up the waterfall just so that as I go, I can make a foundation that's going to support everything. Because if I were to start with the top, then it just makes everything more difficult and there's going to be a lot more readjusting that you'll have to do. So I'm starting with the bottom. And what I'm doing with this level right now is making sure that on this axis going into the pond where the water is going to be flowing, that this is as flat as possible so that we can get a really, really nice, crisp, just flat flow over this. Because if it's too tilted back, we're going to lose a lot of the power of our water flow on that. And if it's too tilted forward, then your stream might be too aggressive and it won't give you that nice, gentle water sound and look that you're going for. And when you're placing your stones for the main part of your waterfall, you want to make sure that there's as little a gap as possible between the levels of it. Because some people, you might be able to put it like here if you had more elevation below. The problem with that is when we get to the sealing step, we're going to have to seal in that entire gap, and it's going to make it look pretty unnatural and ugly. And there's ways you can work around that, putting smaller stones in the crack, but too many small stones will definitely make it look more artificial. So the smaller the gap you can do in between that, the less sealant you're going to use, and the easier it's going to be to hide that when we're completely finishing our design. I've got pretty much the 4 levels of my waterfall. We're going to start with this top piece and flow our way down. So the next step, once I secure this top rock here, is I'm going to put some nice decoration on the sides. These rocks are mainly going to be framing rocks. They're not going to have too much functionality. And then once we have those bigger rocks in, we're going to use these small rocks. And these are really important because these are what is going to help us seal later on. So we're going to use these small rocks to fill in the gaps on the sides here, and that'll allow us to not have such big gaps in between our framing rocks and our waterfall. So we've built out our waterfall now, and what we're going to do is use some of this black foam sealant to try to direct our water flow from the top to the bottom. One of the main challenges with this is any of the cracks that you leave on the sides here is going to weaken your water flow. So let's say we didn't seal this at all. The water would probably shoot off of here, go a little bit here, and then just seep into the sides. And you'd completely lose the effect of your waterfall after the second level. What the foam sealant does is it fills in all the cracks on these little rocks here, and it forces the water down in the channel that you built. And it pretty much maintains the power of that water flow as we go. So the reason for these framing rocks is to fill in the larger gaps, and then these smaller rocks that I placed around here is just to lessen the amount of foam that we have. Because if these rocks weren't here, let's say we take away this rock, now all of a sudden we have big globs of foam that we need to place. So these smaller rocks here allow us to use a much smaller bead of foam, and really hide the foam a lot better when that water is actually flowing. If you've got one of these specialized foam sealant guns with the little knob on the back that adjusts the bead, you want to make sure that your bead size is not too large, not too small. Sort of, you want to test this out to get the perfect amount of foam flowing through this gun. And the reason for that is if the flow is too small, then we're going to have to readjust, and that's not the end of the world. But if it's too large, it's going to shoot out and it's going to stay in your rocks. And this foam isn't the easiest stuff to get off, especially if you get it on your hands. You're going to have foam on your hands for a couple days, and it's not very fun. So we want to try to get the flow as good as possible. We're going to start off light and work our way up if we need to, and we're just going to be very gentle on the trigger here. And so the goal here is to get every single crevice that water could ever possibly go into. So every little crack, and it's okay if it shows now, because when this hardens, it's going to get a nice shimmer on it. And what that'll do, and right there my bead size is a little too large, but what it'll do when it hardens is it'll have a nice sheen to it, and that'll really help to mask it, especially when the water is flowing over it. It'll sort of just look like the light reflection off the water and not foam. So the best way to start is doing the bottom of your foundation. And anywhere that you see two rocks meet, whether it's a small rock or two of these large rocks on your flow channel, you want foam there. Even in this corner here, if I foamed over here, anywhere that water could possibly go, we want to make sure that we're cutting that off, because all those little cracks are going to accumulate. So by the time that your water flows down to your final level, it's going to be much weaker. So it's good to do this right the first time so that we don't have to go back and refoam it, because this stuff takes about an hour to harden, and it's just an inconvenience.
This is a planter combined with a waterfall. Now you can have a part waterfall, part planter, or if you wanted to, you can design the outside of your planter with all stone and even bring some plants into it if you like.